Hey guys and gals, welcome in. I'm Johnny Horror, here to introduce this week's episode, in which I had the pleasure of sitting down with my buddy Kalen Berreman to discuss the fifth and final outing of Indiana Jones. In the episode, we talk about our history with Dr. Jones, the first time we each saw an Indiana Jones film, what we liked about this flick, what we didn't like about this flick, and whether or not we thought it was an appropriate send-off for the famous archaeologist. So go ahead, sit back, relax, enjoy the pod, and thanks for tuning in. I'm Johnny Horror, and this is the Johnny Horror Podcast. Welcome back to the Johnny Horror Podcast. I am your host, Johnny Horror, and with me tonight, my guest of honor, returning guest slash co-host, the man, the myth, the legend, Kalen Berreman.
What's up, Johnny?
How are you, sir?
Living the dream, brother.
I feel ya. It's nice that you don't have to travel this time. You can do the thing from the comfort of your own home, huh?
Yeah, a little less driving.
Yeah. It's I always feel like the drive here is never bad. It's always the drive home at like 3:30 in the morning after we've been talking for 4.5 hours.
Or making my girlfriend come pick me up.
Yeah, there's that too, which is she's a doll. But usually, if that's the case, then you had a fair amount of liquor and you can't tell the difference anyway. So.
That's right. I'm sleeping on the way home.
Tonight we're going to be talking about Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. This is just kind of like really a one-off. I do feel like it's a genre picture, and obviously all the Indiana Jones leading up to this have some horror elements in some way, shape, or form. So I do feel like it does fit into our podcast. That being said, usually when I sit down with you, we talk about any number of things that are either horror adjacent or have nothing to do with horror, just because we have great conversation. So thanks for being here, buddy. I just want to jump right into it. In the film, Indiana Jones is brought out of retirement for one last adventure. And yeah, I mean, we will probably get a little spoilery here. We're definitely going to get spoilery here. So I do suggest that you have seen this movie if you care about what happens in this picture. And if you don't care and you just want to listen to us talk, well, God bless you. And, proceed with caution. Kalen, when you first, actually, let's take it back just a little bit further back. Give me a brief history of your relationship with the Indiana Jones movies.
So I watched the original 3 movies with my grandmother, my dad's mom. She liked to show me. I watched a lot of influential movies with her. Like, she was the person who first showed me like Superman the movie, like the Richard Donner movie, or like the Star Wars trilogy. Mm-hmm. I watched a lot of movies with her. And she was always trying to put on movies that she thought would entertain a very small boy. So, Indiana Jones is right there. So I watched the original 3 movies with her as a very little boy. I'm talking like 4 years old.
Wow.
And I remember rewatching them again at maybe like 5, 6 years old with another family member, an aunt of mine, actually my dad's sister. I rewatched them. And then I remember playing Indiana Jones as a kid in the schoolyard. And then I was actually really disconnected from the movie series for a long time. I didn't watch it in my preteens or my teens. And I came back to it later as an adult and was like, fuck, I love these movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What
Yeah, I really love the movies.
as a young boy, were you scared of any of the darker elements
Oh,
in
yeah.
movies?
Big time. Big time. Scared and generally traumatized. Like, even the ones we think of as being pretty tame, like, are still very violent. Like Last Crusade and Raiders of the Lost Ark are still pretty violent for a 4-year-old boy. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
But yeah, Temple of Doom is outright terrifying. If you're 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah.
Temple of Doom is scary. I don't know if you can hear fireworks going on outside my house. It sounds like a gunfight.
Oh, they're still going, huh?
Yeah, dude, I'm in Oxnard. It doesn't stop.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Yeah, just God bless them. They're
God bless them. God bless America.
What could you ask for?
But yeah, no, Temple of Doom particularly was definitely terrifying when I was little. Yeah.
Yeah, so I saw them like all out of order, just like the most ass backwards way you could watch any of the Indiana Jones movies. My dad showed me Last Crusade. I imagine I was probably about 6 or 7, so that's the one I saw first.
Okay.
And you know me and my upbringing, like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs was scary as fuck. I mean, in all fairness, that which is pretty creepy, but that is like legit levels of terror for me. So at the end of Last Crusade, I was given zero warning, absolutely zero warning about what was going to happen to our antagonist. And I shit you not, I got up and ran around the living room in circles, screaming bloody murder as Donovan was being turned into a skeleton. Like, I could not, like, my brother and I shared a bedroom. We were in a bunk bed at this stage in my life, and that wasn't good enough for me. I had to sleep in the same bed as him for like a week straight. I was terrified, absolutely terrified. The guy who plays Donovan actually has a bit part in Empire Strikes Back as one of the commanders attacking Hoth, and like it scared me to see him. Like that's how traumatized I was by this. I then a couple of years later he shows me Raiders, and this probably about 2 years later, because I remember I had a little Lego set from Phantom Menace that I was playing with that I had bought, and I had a much better memory with that. I love the hell out of Raiders. My dad gave me warning this time and told me when not to look at the end.
How old were you for that one?
Huh?
How old were you for that one for Raiders?
I was 9. I was 9.
Oh, okay, that's a perfect age to watch Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah. And I remember my dad even told me, this is great. He's like, when Indiana Jones says, look away, he said, look away.
Look away. That's
Don't look.
Perfect.
And that was so good. Because like as an adult, or as a teenager, when I finally got the gumption to watch the whole scene play out when Indiana Jones says don't look, I felt like I was breaking the rules, and that made it that much cooler.
Right. That's so cool. I like that.
And yeah, then I eventually saw Temple leading up to Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Like I couldn't have even seen, like, even if I had seen Temple first, that's the prequel. So there could have been some, but I mean,
you didn't even do it in that order. Yeah.
In the worst order possible. But yeah, and were you, by the time you got back into them, you said you kind of fell off the train and then got back into them as an adult. During that period, was Kingdom of Crystal Skull, was that in the lead up to Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, or did you see that after the fact? Did you see that one in theaters?
Yeah, I went and saw it. I imagine I got back into Indiana Jones maybe because of that.
Mm-hmm.
That might have been the catalyst. but
sure.
I was I was one of the people that was very disappointed in that movie.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that reignited like, oh, I really love these original 3 movies a lot. Yeah.
Um, so when I saw Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, I actually have a great like memory of seeing it. Like I saw like went and saw it, like the Saturday after it like it opened on a Friday, and then I saw it the next day. I went with my drama teacher, who was like a essentially a surrogate father to me. I don't talk about him like hardly at all on this
Not
podcast,
much.
but
No.
he is actually like one of the like biggest influences in my life, because he taught me how to act, like really taught me how to act. And we would sit and talk movies, and like I said, very much became, after my parents split and I was in high school and everything, and my dad wasn't around as much, he was definitely someone who was always talking to me, and talking to me about movies, talking to me about life. But I would every now and then, like, he'd be like, "Hey, you want to go see this movie?" I'd be like, "Fuck yeah, I want to go see this movie." So we went and saw it on a Saturday morning. It was like one of those fun things where like you're fucking eating, like, I'm still like a high school kid, and I have a mother who's somewhat responsible, and I don't eat candy at 11 o'clock in the morning, but I was eating candy
Right.
and popcorn at 11 o'clock in the morning. It was really fun.
Right.
And
Yeah, that's pretty
we
good.
we both walked out of it like enjoying it. Like, it was a fun movie going experience. I'm sure he would. I think he does feel very differently about it now, if I remember right. But we both walked out of it enjoying it, and
Mhm.
I even liked it quite a bit. Like, but there was certainly something missing in that. There was, if for nothing else, I walked out of it going, well, like, nobody's face melted
That's
or
right.
died. No one died like terribly horrific deaths. So that was like a big kind of like uh-oh thing for me. And obviously, the more time has gone on, the more I look back and go, hey, they definitely missed the mark
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah.
Um, I think a lot of that has to do with, honestly, I think a lot of the misgivings with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull comes down to Steven Spielberg's heart not really being in it.
Yeah.
Um,
It
uh,
sounded to me, not to interrupt you, it sounded
no,
to
no,
me a
no.
little bit like he wasn't really into that script
Hmm. Yeah,
because he had wanted to make the Frank Darabont's
yeah.
City of the Gods, and it sounded like he and Harrison Ford had been pretty into that. And I wonder if that had to do with it. Like he just didn't believe in the script as much. I don't have any source on that. I wonder
So,
if that had to do with it.
I gotta reference my guys over at Halloweenies, because they've done an extensive series on the Indiana Jones films, and they talk quite a bit about the really George Lucas really forcing it to be about aliens and whatnot. And I
Mhm.
think, while I do believe, from what I can tell from what Halloweenies discussed, Darabont's script is fairly close to, hi pup. Darabont's
Sorry.
script is fairly close to what we got. It's just more of an Indiana Jones picture. There's
Uh-huh.
more like the ants sequence, for instance. They said
Mhm.
that, like, you see like flesh getting ripped off and stuff like that. And
Mhm.
obviously, if it's a Darabont script,
Right.
you're dealing with much better dialogue too. That's
Right.
just gonna be part of it. And if I remember right, in Darabon's script, there is no son. Marion is
Mhm.
there. Um,
That's right. No, it's a daughter.
yeah,
There's
it's
a
something along
13-year-old
those
daughter,
lines. Yeah.
I think. I
So
think. If I'm wrong, people will go ahead and call me out on that, but I think it was that there was a 13-year-old daughter. In one version of the script, at least, I remember
yeah,
something like that.
in Darabon's script, I'm almost positive it was. I'm pretty sure it's just Marion, and she has it's something to do with her. She has more to do in it, and I
Okay.
don't think I don't think there's a child.
There's not a okay.
In that one, but
maybe I'm thinking of a different script.
Yeah. Either way, if Darabont knows not only how to direct, he knows how to write.
He knows how to write. I have a very high opinion of Darabont. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a high opinion of David Koepp, who did the script for Crystal Skull.
Well,
I just think, and I don't mean to throw Lucas under the bus. I just think that Lucas was giving him a lot of bonk assignments in that script, you know?
Again, if I can reference Halloweenies who are, who have done quite a bit of research in their material, they basically said that David Koepp said he would get notes from Lucas, bring them to Spielberg, and then get notes from Spielberg and bring them to Lucas and try and find a middle ground. Doesn't sound enjoyable, even at the least. Yeah, I really feel like when I watch that movie and just when I think about Steven Spielberg, like it just, and we've talked about this, like it feels like, Spielberg's in a time in his life where that type of movie is not particularly interesting to him anymore. So it very much feels like he's kind of doing one last hurrah for his buddy George Lucas, and Harrison Ford is on board because essentially Spielberg's on board. Like, I know, like, he likes working with both George Lucas and Spielberg, but I think he's not going to do it if Spielberg isn't on board,
Yeah.
So with all of that said, when Disney announces their plans to bring Indiana Jones back all the way in 2016, I believe, were you optimistic?
I wasn't optimistic, but the original plan was that Spielberg was going to make the movie. I was always going to be hopeful.
Yeah.
I was going to go see it, and I was going to hope for the best. Yeah.
And I think it was all the way up until 2020. It was right before the pandemic hit, I believe, that they announced that James Mangold was going to be taking over. How did you feel about that?
That actually made me excited for the project. Because it felt like Spielberg wasn't really into it. Mm-hmm. And I felt like James Mangold, as a sort of disciple of Spielberg, as a young man who went and saw Raiders of the Lost Ark in 1981 in movie theaters, and you know what I mean? Probably a guy who that had a large influence on him as a filmmaker. I just had a feeling he was gonna take a really impressive swing at it. And like, I don't know that you can definitively say that James Mangold has ever done a bad movie.
I mean,
I think he's one of the more impressive, consistent, and versatile filmmakers in the game.
He's really like, he is what's the word for it, where he's very like almost unassuming as a filmmaker. That's just for lack of a better word. Like, if you were to list like the top 5 filmmakers like right now making films, like you think Chris Nolan, Denis Villeneuve, like you think of these kind of like these big name guys, but he is just consistent. Like, he's consistently like either good or great.
Yep.
Which is a pretty hard thing to do.
It's really hard. It's really hard.
Hollywood, yeah.
I mean, Spielberg has he's laid a couple of eggs. You know what I mean? And he's the GOAT, but he's laid a couple of eggs.
Yeah.
James Mangold doesn't really lay eggs.
I feel like there's like one, I'm trying to look right now and see, I feel like there's one movie that that I would argue is not. No. Oh, fuck. He directed Identity? Holy shit. I love Identity. I fucking love Identity.
Yeah, dude, Mangold's awesome.
Man. Dude, he even, like, dude, this man, insane. Like Westerns, romantic comedies, horror movies, sports dramas, like Marvel movies. Like, what the shit, man?
Cop movies, everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything. He'd do the whole thing.
God bless him. Yeah, like even Night and Day, the Tom Cruise, Cameron Diaz one, which I would argue is not great, still has one of the best lines of dialogue ever uttered on film, where Tom Cruise is like, "Nobody move, or I kill myself and then her." Dude, 310, the 310 to Yuma remake is excellent.
It's a masterpiece, dude. I love that movie.
Yeah,
I love that movie.
yeah,
Great movie.
Before we jump too far, and I don't want to spend too much time here, but since we're talking about Mangold and all this lead up to it, obviously Logan is arguably like the Dark Knight and Logan. Like
it's right there.
Within a hair, as far as greatest comic book movies ever made.
Totally.
What did you think of the Wolverine? Because I think there's a lot of things to like about that movie, but I think there's also a lot of things to not like about that movie.
Well, I think I clued you in when I said I think it can be argued that Mangold never made a bad movie. I don't think the Wolverine's a bad movie. I think that it has some weaknesses. I think there's one studio requisite scene in there that really doesn't work. At the end of the movie, you know, the samurai, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Is it
in the third act?
The robot
CGI
thing?
robot? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that at all.
So that was a studio mandated scene, and I don't think it works. But like around that, I feel like most of the movie is like quite good.
Yeah, actually, that is the one thing when I think about that movie that I'm like, that's not good thing, but everything else, like, you see Hugh Jackman, who is coming off of Wolverine Origins, which is arguably one of the worst superhero movies ever made.
One of the worst movies I've ever seen, in my personal opinion.
And he's so close, like it's like almost perfection. He does Days of Future Past after this, which is my personal favorite X-Men movie. Not like Logan is something else. Logan is something else entirely. But Days of Future Past is like just mwah. But yeah, I do think the Wolverine has a lot to like in it. What about Ford versus Ferrari? Are you a fan?
I loved it.
Oh man, I
loved it.
I don't particularly care about racing movies, but man,
I don't care about racing at all. Like I'm not a racing person.
And God, what a well-crafted picture.
I had to talk my girlfriend into it, and she was like very resistant for like 2 weeks, and finally I was like, if you want me to watch it without you, I'll just watch it without you. You know what I mean? And she's like, no, it's fine. Let's give it a try. And she loved it.
Yeah, that's it was I took Brian on a date to go see that for his birthday, and it was just one of those ones that was just like, I think we wanted to go see it because it, you know, we always liken ourselves to different characters in movies and TV shows, and the scene where Christian Bale and Matt Damon are fighting, like you see that in the trailer. Like, all right, well, yeah, we're gonna go see it just for that, and then we ended up being like, fuck, that was a really fucking good movie. And obviously Walk the Line.
Walk the Line, man.
You know, it's weird because if you look, he does Girl Interrupted in 1999, which gets major acclaim for its acting performances, obviously. And then in 2005 also gets major acclaim for acting performances, and one could argue that, you know, James Mangold is an actor's director, right? Like,
absolutely.
I feel like if you're gonna have just consistently great performances in movies, you have to have a good director, you know, getting what he wants out of his actors. So but yeah, I'm right there with you. When it was announced Spielberg wasn't doing it anymore, I was like, fuck, nothing good can come from this. And then when it was James Mangold, I was like, fuck, I think I'm more excited now than I've ever been for it.
That was my exact reaction. I was like, oh, if Spielberg's not even doing it, I don't even care. And they're like, it's James Mangold. And I was like, you son of a bitch, I'm in.
Pull the rug out from underneath me.
Yep.
All right, man. Let's just talk about it. You saw this movie on opening night, right?
Opening night.
Okay, I saw it a couple of days later because I have a child. Frick. There's only so much I can do. It was getting to a point where like I had asked Celeste like we could go see it on Thursday or Sunday, and she's like, let's try for Sunday. And she didn't like mention it again. Didn't mention it again. And I knew we had other stuff to do that day. So I was like, dude, if she doesn't like say anything about it, I'm just gonna go see it by myself within the next couple of days. And she like brought it up to me that morning. She was like, yeah, my mom said she'd watch the kid. Like, let's go. And I was like, oh fuck yeah, we're gonna go see Indiana Jones. I even like nudged her like because we both love Indiana Jones movies, and it was like, you know, right when the thing was starting, I was like, babe, we're getting ready to see our first Indiana Jones movie together. And she's like, no, we saw the other one in theaters together. And I was like, no, that came out in 2008. That was like a year before we got together. Right. It's like, oh, I must have seen that with Tom. Like,
bro, in most marriages, that would be like a deadly fight right there. I love that for you guys. That's just like,
yeah. I got a kick out of it because she does this so many times. She's like, I've watched that movie with you. We just watched it like the other night. She was like, didn't we just watch this? I was like, I've never seen this movie. She's like, no, we just watched it like a few weeks ago. I was like, I've never seen this movie. I don't know what to tell you.
You're like, I'm sorry, it's your other husband. It wasn't me.
It's like, you're confusing me with somebody else. I don't know. You know, one of your many suitors. What's a guy to do? No. So, first thoughts when you walked out of the theater. What was the vibe after you got done seeing Dial of Destiny?
A mixture of excitement and some frustration.
Mm-hmm.
I was frustrated because there was a number of creative decisions that I wouldn't have made, and that I would have just done a little differently. And I was just a little bit irritated about a couple of decisions.
Yeah.
But ultimately, like, I mean, I liked the movie a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was kind of like, I sort of really want to watch this again.
Yeah.
And I sort of still kind of feel that way. Like I'm really looking forward to watching this movie again. And I've actually been looking forward to this conversation because I want us to kind of comb through our thoughts on this movie a little bit and digest a little bit how we feel about it.
Yeah, it was one of those things that I thought about a lot the night of, and then I really haven't thought about it since. And like even when like I was, you know, doing the dishes like right before we hopped on this call, and I was just like, hey, I talked to Kalen, and I was like, and then somehow just like Indiana Jones popped in my brain. I was thinking of the two things separately. Like I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna, you know, we gotta do this thing with Kalen and da 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 da, and it's like Indiana Jones, and I was like, oh, I really want to talk about. Oh yeah, that's what I'm doing. Yeah, like it just like the two things kind of like, you know, were separate in my brain, and I got excited when I kind of like kept on remembering that yes, this is what we're gonna talk about.
Right.
Well, as we tend to do on this podcast, we'll just start with the good stuff. Give me a couple of things you liked about this movie right out the gate.
Performances. I thought Harrison Ford, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, Mads Mikkelsen, Boyd Holbrook, and anyone else I'm forgetting were fantastic in the movie. I love the performances all the way around. I fucking love the opening. I love the train.
Yeah.
Like the de-aged 1940 sequence in the movie. I fucking loved that.
Yeah.
Like I adored it. I would have watched a whole movie of that.
Really?
Yes, very much so. And I Sandy joked with me after the movie that when that sequence ended and there was a momentary blank screen, she was going to lean over and say, "Well, that's the best Indiana Jones movie I've ever seen," like as if that had been the whole movie. Yeah, dude, I fucking loved that sequence. I thought that was some of the most fun Indiana Jones action, and I thought that was a great look at sort of modern Indiana Jones action as it would be shot and done today. Because part of the appeal of the old movies is that they, like, Raiders of the Lost Ark came out in 1981. You didn't have the same tools to make films then as you do today. Yeah. And that's part of the appeal. Like, that's part of the fun, is that it's all practical and it's all done very practically. But there's a certain scope of action you're able to do today that you just couldn't have done in 1981. That was really fun to see that in an Indiana Jones movie.
In a good way, right? We're not talking like, monkeys and, Shia LaBeouf. Like,
well, that's my point, is in that one we got like Shia LaBeouf like swinging on vines with monkeys, and we got like, silly shit like that. We got we got some bad VFX in that movie, and we got some silly sequences that didn't work. In this one, I felt like we were getting the kind of badass, sort of grounded Indiana Jones action sequences, but with the modern technology.
Don't get me wrong, there's always an element of fantasticalness.
Of course.
Indiana Jones films, but King of the Crystal Skull, just for all intents and purposes, through and through, just feels like such a cartoon in so many ways. Yeah. Particularly that second half of it. But I'll save my thoughts here in a minute. Why don't you hit me with maybe one or two other things that you really, really liked about it?
I like the early action, like when we get started in the modern day. I like the early action. I like the chase in New York and the tuk-tuk chase scene.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, I liked that a lot. I thought the movie was super well shot. I thought the visuals looked great. Like, I love the way, like, dude, the shot of Helena riding her motorcycle towards the airplane. I wanted to stand up and clap in the movie theater. I love that shot so fucking much.
Yeah.
And I liked that this movie had a story and was trying to be about something.
Yeah.
I think that that was a bold decision, but it's one that I'll always err on the side of the filmmaker that wants to make a movie about something and has something to say. This is very much a movie about getting old. It's very much a movie about dealing with trauma. It's very much a movie about finding purpose. Yeah. And I liked that.
Yeah. I have some thoughts about A, how the movie handled that, and B, how, like, I think it could have improved upon that, but we'll get to that momentarily. As far as goods, I'm right there with you. As far as the performances are concerned, I think where I feel that a lot of people like for instance, when Force Awakens came out, people like one of the big things that people said was like Harrison Ford's performance in The Force Awakens. They're like, that feels like Han Solo in a way that it didn't feel like Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Yeah.
Not to say I would never accuse Harrison Ford of phoning it in. I don't think it was his performance so much as it was direction and writing and things that were very much not Indiana Jones.
It was the movie, yeah.
Where this, like, dude, in the after the opening train sequence, and we're just spending a little bit of time with present day Indiana Jones, like, I felt myself wanting to cry because I'm looking at, like, one of my heroes in the last, like, period of his life, basically. Mm-hmm. Like, his prime is so far past him, and I'm just, like, thinking about him in that opening shot of him turning around in Raiders of the Lost Ark, and there is this, like god of a man before you, and now you see like the mortality catch up. And I just think his how he is in this and how just grounded and believable, like I feel all the emotions that he's going through at any given point in time. And it's very much like an adventure that he just does not want to go on, you know. And I kind of like that aspect of it. It's just him trying to, you know, do right by, you know, his dead friend, and then maybe trying to right a couple of wrongs in his past and not let everything go to shit. It's nothing. He's not feeling compelled to go chase this item, this artifact to you know, for the love of the game. Basically, it's something that he's, you know, really trying to stay out of. I agree. I like Phoebe Waller-Bridge. I think she did a good job. I have a lot of complicated feelings just about that character and the necessity for that specific character in this film. That being said, I think she does well. She has good chemistry with Ford. Mads Mikkelsen is it's scientifically impossible for that man to turn in a bad performance. Like it just if it happened, time would start turning backwards.
Cats would be living with dogs, and all hell would break loose.
Yeah. And I mean, I've had a rock hard boner for Boyd Holbrook ever since Logan. So, like that man just oozes charisma, and like it's pretty like just still like kind of playing like the same type of character, but is immensely unlikable. It's not doing too much different, you know. So that's just little character stuff like that, and even like his costume and shit, like, you know, which, you know, that's obviously the costume department. That's not performance, but just little things like that just kind of make him like, this guy's just kind of a turd, you know. And I like that, you know, even though he does kind of put off this machismo vibe, he never once does he feel like he's like a threat in the way like some other you know, side villains have ever been. You're always just kind of looking at this guy like, God, what a twerp, you know. And I like that. I like that he's not, as an actor, he knows his place, you know, in the story. He's not overselling it. He's playing the role, you know. I felt in this way, and I told you this, that this movie just feels like an Indiana Jones movie. It's some about they're going places, they're doing stuff. It doesn't feel like they're in a fucking studio the entire time. They're actually at a lot of these places doing a lot of these things. It has a sense of adventure to it. The cinematography is just beautiful. Like, it is just a pretty picture to look at. And I really like the ending. Again, if you haven't seen the movie, then just, you know, spoiler warning, but dude, I was in tears at the end with him and Marion. Like when you realize like the bit that they're gonna do, like that.
Yeah.
That right there is such. I don't even know if I can call it fan service, because it's beyond that. It's just good writing.
Yeah.
You know? And that
was respecting your material.
Yeah, I mean, that was so well done. And so well placed that to me, that took a movie that I thought was fun and okay to like, that's a perfect ending for that character, you know? What are some things you didn't like? Let's talk about the shit.
Well, I think Helena's character probably should have been less of an asshole. She
She's
wasn't a
terribly
likable enough
unlikable,
character.
like
Yeah.
there's very little redeeming qualities for her.
Yeah. She's a real dick. She does. I mean, there's a little bit of an arc there. You get the sense that she cares about the little boy. You get the sense that she actually does care about Indiana Jones and is on some level is sort of resentful of his lack of presence in her life, right?
Yeah.
And I do like that. I like that. And I like the relationship with the little boy. And I kind of like the whole like Indiana Jones, like, oh, maybe you're not the cold-hearted capitalist that you play on TV. Like maybe there's more to you. I like that stuff. But ultimately, like she's a real asshole and she's a really unlikable character. And I don't think that really fit the goal of the movie totally. It's not, and it's just not the way I would have written her myself.
Yeah.
And then another problem which ties into her existence as a character. So in the original Indiana Jones movies, it's about a guy who's like 35 to 40 years old.
Mm-hmm.
He's in shape, he's in his prime, and he's not like Batman by any means. Like he's not perfect, but he's a badass. And he has to win by the skin of his teeth. But ultimately he beats the shit out of the bad guy, right? Like ultimately he gets it done. I like that he's not invincible. I like that his fights with all the big guys are nail biting, white knuckle experiences. I love all that. That's part of the whole deal, right? But in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, we did this weird thing where we had a 65-year-old Indiana Jones and we made him more badass than the prime version of himself.
Mm-hmm.
He was like more like Batman in that movie. And I was not super into that. But I feel like this movie had a choice to make, in my opinion. Follow me down the rabbit hole here for just a second. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
You have an 80-year-old man playing Indiana Jones. So to me personally, and I'm curious if your filmmaking sensibilities can relate to this, you either do it's Indiana Jones, it's fantastical, he can fight anyway. Or you do he's 80 years old and he can't really fight anymore. And I felt like what Mangold did was he landed in the middle.
Yeah.
Towards the side of he's 80 and he can't fight anymore, but still further in the middle than I would have gone.
Yeah.
And if you're going to do that, you need a fighter in the movie. You need a person who can beat up the bad guy in the movie.
Yeah.
And Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character, Helena, however you say that, she's not really that.
Yeah.
She's badass in the sense that she's like sharp and like capable, but she's not like a bruiser of any sort. And so in the second half of the movie, you're left with a lot of really weirdly inconsequential action sequences that don't ever really satisfy in the way that you want an Indiana Jones movie to satisfy.
Yeah.
And in the second half of the movie, the shape of the movie is like early on you have big action, big peaks. And then we drop down into like a more steady like storytelling thing. And then there's like a little bit of a peak of action and then back down.
Yeah.
And that's a very odd shape for a movie.
Yeah.
And that the problem with that, the shape of the movie, the structure, I think also relates to the problem of, well, do you have an 80-year-old man or do you have Indiana Jones? Like, what are we doing with that?
Yeah.
Also relates to the problem of the character Helena being kind of an asshole and not necessarily being the right character for the movie.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, it does. And I agree with that. And like I said, I have thoughts about. I have significant thoughts about like what this movie I think could have been and should have been, and like a better story about grief and dealing with regret is somewhere in there.
Yeah.
But I digress. I agree with that. There's a very weird, I don't want to say necessarily pacing, because I do feel like the movie flows very well. Like I do think there's a story being told, and it is told fairly well. But as in terms of action, I agree. There is certainly a weird. It's definitely front loaded.
Yep.
Very much so. For better or worse. At least we're not. Again, like I think Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, the good action is front loaded.
Front loaded, yeah.
I think, without getting too off track, this is just something I wanted to say. One of the things I really do like about Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, we were kind of touching about like Indiana Jones being like 65 in that one. Like, I really, 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 really like the Area 51 sequence. I think that's as good as that movie ever gets.
Yep.
And I think that's also where Indiana Jones feels the most Indiana Jones in that movie. And it's just a beautiful set piece and, has a fun little callback to the original. But yeah, for better or worse, I don't necessarily mind this picture ending on a more like quiet note. I think it suits the character, but I agree with you that maybe there is just a weird little blip somewhere in that last 75 to 80% of the movie where I feel like there should have been a little bit more. And as far as like storytelling and writing and characters are concerned, you're absolutely right. I think they were very conscious to not make Indiana Jones an invalid,
Right.
which honestly, at this stage in his life, with everything that he's been through, he probably would be.
Oh,
But yeah, I do think that had we had maybe someone who was a little bit more of a go-getter, again, they probably didn't want to make anyone that was too like Marion, someone who is that, full blown. So I can certainly appreciate what their thinking would have been in that regard, but I agree there should have been someone who could dust up with the best of them.
you need someone to fight the bad guys
Mm-hmm.
in this kind of movie.
Yeah.
Like I genuinely, sorry, my dog is asking.
No, you're good. You're good.
I genuinely respect James Mangold's storytelling sensibilities and what he was trying to do here. I do. I think highly of the guy, and I like what he was trying to do. But like when you're making an Indiana Jones movie, there needs to be someone that can punch the bad guys. And there needs to be a little bit more bad guy punching at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
There just does. And there could have been simple ways to do it. You could have had the big character, the big guy, who ended up dying because the kid unlocked the thing and locked him on the thing and swam away. Like, you could have had him not die in there. You could have had him confront Indiana Jones in Rome and done like a fight sequence there, him and the big guy, or like on the plane, you could have done something like that. Or that's just like an example off the top of my head. Yeah. But like you could have thrown something in there, some kind of confrontation, and created more suspense at the end and more action at the end, and had the shape of the movie fit a little bit better. And then also have that moment at the end with Marion, which, by the way, I didn't get back to this, but I totally agree with you. I love the ending.
Yeah.
I love the ending. But like that ending, if that had come after a more serious, high tension climax with greater peaks of action, like if you're coming into that ending pumped from the action sequence before it, man, you know what I mean? I think people would have left the theater with a different feeling if you had done that. And I think that they didn't quite deliver that.
Anything else that's like a big no for you?
I don't think so. I think that's it. I didn't totally think the kid earned his keep in the movie, but
he was one of those things I was like, what the fuck is this kid still doing here?
What's this kid doing here? The kid was there to ground Helena, but
like, I understand
he didn't earn his own keep.
Indiana Jones picture, but like, come on, you are no short round motherfucker. Like,
exactly. So this is, I just want to say real quick, this is something I said to Sandy, I was like, the thing about Short Round is that he worked beautifully in that movie because you got lightning in a bottle, right? You got the right kid at the right time with the right script, with the right director. I get wanting to try and catch that Short Round magic again, but you can't because you don't have him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And this kid felt like a preteen kind of douchebag. I don't know. Like, so like, don't get me wrong. Like the performance is great and everything. Just like the character himself. I'm like, you're superfluous. Like,
right.
Like, guys, you could have saved like $10,000 by not having that kid in this movie. I'm just saying. This is one of the most expensive movies of all time. And you were like, hey, you know what? We'll find somebody else to do the two things that you do in this movie, you know?
Right.
Excuse me. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's like one of my negative things too. I gotta come. I gotta come to blows with you. The opening for me, while a lot of fun, I had a rough time with the de-aging.
You
I
know,
did,
I'm hearing people say that, man.
and I mean,
I don't get it.
I'm I will say, like, there's some really good stuff in there. Um, the big thing that I was like right out the gate before, like, I was like, dude, before, like, there's a line of dialogue spoken. I know what's gonna happen. Like, I know this is, gonna be, pre old Jones. This is gonna be in the past and everything. And I was like, if he sounds like old Indiana Jones, that's gonna do it for me right there. That's
Yeah.
gonna be a big, like, take me out. And his very first line of dialogue, not all of them, by any means, but his very first line of dialogue was like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
fuck, there it goes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's, like I said, there's some really great work done in there. There are moments where I felt like there was like a bobbing head almost. I like the sequence. I agree with you. It feels like I totally pictured this like happening, like, I don't know, like what, like 6 to 8 months after like the Last Crusade. It
Mhm.
feels like it's very close to that time period.
It's set at the end of World War II, so it's more like 6-7 years later.
Oh, really, really? Because
Yeah.
we're God, when is the Last Crusade? Like, when does that one take place?
I think 38.
Oh, damn.
Well,
Then yeah,
this is about 7 years later.
yeah, because Last Crusade's like a year after Raiders or something like that. So yeah, no, you're right. You're absolutely right. Pardon me. Um, well, that makes it even more interesting. I, I, the thing with the character of Mads Mikkelsen, like, I really kind of would have liked it if he had been more of like not like an actual villain, like, and they almost set him up to be this way in the beginning too, where
I
you're
agree.
like, maybe he's gonna go back and try and fix things, maybe he's gonna do something differently, and it could still upset the fabric of time.
I feel like
But
they did it on purpose, don't you?
yeah, I really feel like there was like, I was like, we've had enough like full blown bad guy Nazis. Like, this is an opportunity. I really feel like, maybe it was just hopeful thinking, but like, I really kind of wanted them to do something a little bit differently with him.
I felt like they might have even been intentionally teasing that though.
Yeah.
Like maybe he won't just be some evil Nazi bastard, and then he definitely
Surprise.
is. Maybe I'm wrong there. Maybe I'm hallucinating, but
Yeah, man, I really feel like there was breadcrumbs of that there, particularly in that opening. Like, I was like watching the trailers and stuff like that. I was like, man, I hope they do something different. And they really laid those breadcrumbs in the beginning. And I was like, man, I really hope that they do something different. Like, I think they're going to. And then it was more the same old, same old. Um, uh, for better or worse. I will say, in that opening sequence, when he's hanging off the edge of that train and then gets hit by that pole, I leaned right over to Celeste and I was like, that motherfucker would be cut in half. There's
I mean,
no
yeah.
way in hell that anyone would ever survive that. So
Well, that was why though they showed it give. Did you see that?
No, I didn't.
So when he hit it, he didn't just hit it like that and go down. He hit it and it spun.
Okay.
So it had give. So there was a little built-in explanation. I mean, he's still probably deader than fried chicken, but there was a little bit of verisimilitude built into the scene.
There's the suspension of disbelief then.
Exactly.
But yeah, that was one thing. See, I didn't catch that, and that was one thing I was like, all right, you've got two strikes against me right here. And dude, like you could even ask Celeste, like by no means was I like a grump about it. I was sitting like this with
Yeah.
like my hands in on my face and my knees, my elbows on my knees the entire movie.
Yeah.
Like just like smiling. I was having fun from start to finish. Um but so I'll just stop burying the lead and I'll just tell you what I think would have made this a better picture.
Hit me.
Um, I think that I do like the flashback opening and everything, and I feel like that was pretty necessary to the story. But I wanted another flashback. I wanted a flashback of instead of Mutt, Shia LaBeouf, you know, Indiana Jones' son being, killed off screen. I don't care what you got to do, recast him, CGI him in. I don't give a shit. Indiana Jones should have been there. Should have been there when his son died, one way or another. And the film should have been about him trying to get the dial of destiny and turn back time to save his son. It should have been his obsession
That's a
to go
wild
back
pitch, brother.
and try and fix it. And then it's his whole process of him dealing with grief. And then at the very end, you do whatever you have to do to kind of,
Get it right. Yeah.
that's
I
where
feel you.
the
I feel you.
role of Helena could have been dialed in so much tighter to be, the surrogate child that she should have been, rather this antagonistic force. But it should have been, there could have been bad guys involved. Like again, you could have even done the Mads Mikkelsen thing and then had that twist
Right.
of him trying to get the dial of destiny to keep it safe, to not let anybody use it, and have Jones be the one that this flipperoo where Jones is the one trying to do it because he's so grief stricken at losing his son that he's the one who's trying to go back and whatnot. And then that makes that ending with him and Marion even better. And it's him coming to terms with not just his old age, but his failures as a father, basically. And to me, if that's the story, that justifies this movie. It is a beautiful epilogue. And again, like it's if you tell that story, you don't need Kingdom of the Crystal Skull to tell. Like even this movie, I was watching, I was like, they did their legwork. Like you don't need to watch Kingdom of the Crystal
No, you
Skull
can
to
skip Crystal
appreciate
Skull. Yep.
what this film is. Like
I agree.
Indiana Jones got married, he had a son, and his son died, and his marriage fell apart. Like, if anything, this film works better without that movie.
Yeah.
And I would say that it still works for that pitch too. Like I think there's an even better, more just a quieter story, and a very sad but very fulfilling ending there.
Well, I don't hate your pitch. I get what you're going for there, and I definitely think that Indiana Jones Chasing the Treasure is more in line with the movies as we have seen them growing up. So like I feel what you're doing there.
It's a little too dark. It's a little too dark.
It's pretty dark. It's also well, here's the thing, dude, is this is an exercise you do that I don't typically do this, because this is a lot of work. And but like you are willing to be like, okay, I'm gonna bust this movie open at the seams and think up a completely different movie. You know what I mean? And I typically don't do that. I typically try and look at exactly what the filmmaker was trying to do. And if I have notes on the movie, it's based specifically on that. You know what I mean? It's based on what did Mangold want to do here? So the notes that I would give would be like, hey, you need someone who can throw a punch. You need a little bit more action here. You need to make this character make a little more sense. My notes are a little bit more like that. Just because I feel like pitching a different movie is
Well,
It's tough to do
foolhardy is
because
what it is.
what's that?
I said it's foolhardy is what it is.
Well, it's yeah. I mean, it's a little foolhardy, right? Because then you got to come up with a whole movie. So it's like if you're gonna pitch, well, this would be a better movie. Then like, okay, shoot, page one, like write the movie. You know what I mean? So like, it's a lot to do. I see what you're saying though. I'm not saying like I definitely would have seen that movie that you're describing for sure.
Well, I mean, this is again, this is not me like sitting down going, ha, ha. This is me watching the movie going,
How would I have done this movie?
This is like I was like, because when they have those beats, that bit about with Harrison Ford, talking about how Mutt died and everything, like I was like, what are you guys doing? That's your movie. That is your fucking movie. It's right there. And again, with Marion at the end, I didn't know she was going to come back. I didn't
either.
Hoping that she was going to be it.
I didn't get anything about the movie spoiled for me.
Yeah, that is like that's the best scene in the movie for me. That is the scene, like just the two of them together. And her performance in that 2-minute scene is better than her entire performance in Kingdom of the Crystal
Skull. Yeah, for sure.
No shots fired. It's just again.
It's the movie.
That's not a good script, and sometimes
it's the movie. Yeah, it's not the actor.
But yeah. So obviously, if I was going to pitch the story, I'd have a little bit more details to work out. But that was just me spitballing in something that, like, again, particularly as a parent watching this and going with a son, I'm like, yeah, if you want to tell a thought-provoking story and give justification for this character's final adventure, you got to make it mean something.
Sure. I think that you are a young man with a young son, and I think that James Mangold is an old man who probably has adult children.
Yeah.
And he probably thinks about these things differently, but his pitch for the movie was it's a movie about getting old and everything that comes with that.
Yeah.
So it's not just a movie about grieving about your son, although that's obviously a huge component of the movie. But the movie's about being old. It's about being invisible, which comes with it. Like a guy like Harrison Ford, who in his prime, everyone paid attention to him, and now nobody even looks at him as he walks down the street. It's about losing not just your son, but losing other things in your life. You know what I mean? It's about loss in general. It's about aging. It's about losing hope. It's about
I felt that
purpose and place,
And I mean, I will say one of the things that I really liked about this movie, and I'm not sure everyone likes about this movie, and I don't know if you like about it because we haven't discussed it, but the time jump thing, I liked it. Little weird, but it's also, we haven't seen anything like that in an Indiana Jones movie, and I felt like the consequences of the MacGuffin, like I felt like those two things suited each other. Like I liked that realization that, oh no, we've gone too far, sort of a deal.
Yeah,
I do like that. I really, really like Indiana Jones sitting on that beach saying, "Leave me here," and she's like, "You got to come back," and he says, "For what?" Like as a young man.
Yep.
I still feel that. I feel that.
I do too. I do too. And I like that part too. So I don't love everything about the going back in time thing. I kind of would have maybe liked it if we got a little bit less of what was going on in Rome. I didn't need to see Roman soldiers running around and unsheathing their Roman swords and shit.
Yeah, there's elements about that I would liken to Kingdom of the Crystal Skull in the sense that it seemed cartoony and it didn't fit the moment.
Right.
I agree with that very much.
But I love them flying into the vortex. I love the realization that they're in ancient Rome.
Yeah.
That was fucking tight.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the emotional moment of Indy being like, leave me. Like, what am I going back for? I would have been pissed if the movie had left him in ancient Rome. I'd have been like, that's fucking stupid.
Dude, I thought they were going to. Like, I know. When she punched him, I was like, oh, thank Christ. Like, yeah. I thought he was going to die. Like,
that's fucking stupid.
I mean, to a certain extent, there is like for lack of a better phrase, poetic justice to that. You know, the grave robber gets
right,
to be
right.
found.
He
You know,
becomes the grave. Yeah.
But yeah, no. Obviously, there's like I said, where the movie ends is the best part of the film for me. So, where do you rank this in your Indiana Jones? I mean, I don't think anything touches the top three. You know,
Right. I
uh,
mean, right.
it's obviously above Kingdom. So
Yep.
you rank it at 4, probably.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
rank it at 4.
how do you what's your ranking in general for the Indiana Jones franchise?
Oh man, I don't talk about this often. My favorite Indiana Jones movie is Temple of Doom.
Yeah, because you're an '80s baby, right? I tell you, man, all those '80s kids love that fucking movie so much.
Temple of Doom is my favorite Indiana Jones movie, and I wholesale acknowledge the flaws in the movie. Like I see them too. Like I've seen the movie, I know. Like I know that not all the jokes land, and I know that the romantic lead is not always great. But the good in that movie far outweighs the bad for me. I love how scary it is. I love how different it is. I love how creative it is. I think it's by far got the best action in the series. I think Indy has the best actual character arc in the entire series in that movie, because in the beginning of the movie, it's fortune and glory. And at the end of the movie, it's I got to save this kid because I love him, and I got to save these kids for this village because it's the right thing to do. And it's really the only time we see Indiana Jones be heroic like that. And it's in the darkest movie.
Yeah.
Like in the darkest movie, we see him be the most heroic, and it's not in like a cheesy, corny, unearned kind of way. It's in a very earned and earnest kind of way. And I love that. I fucking love Short Round. I think Ke Huy Quan is a force of nature. I think they got lightning in a bottle with that kid in that movie. And I think he works so well in his relationship with Indiana Jones. I love it. You know,
Yeah.
okie dokie, Dr. Jones, hold on to your potatoes. Like I fucking love him.
I
And
say okie
yeah,
dokie,
it's my
Dr.
favorite one.
Jones on a daily basis. So.
There you go. There you go. So that's my favorite one. And for me, Raiders and Last Crusade, it probably goes Raiders, Last Crusade, but those two, it depends on the day you catch me on and which one I watched most recently.
Yeah.
How about you?
I mean, did you watch my review on Temple of Doom?
Yes.
Okay. So you know that I vividly remember, like, you know, back in the day, I used to do this really weird thing where you would go to like the library and you could get movies there, right?
That's
And
right.
it seems so weird in retrospect that anyone would ever do such a thing, but like there are actual video stores that you go to, but we would get movies from the library too, and we would get
They were free.
Indiana Jones movies from the library. And while I was allowed to see Last Crusade and Raiders, my parents
Oh, that's right.
they would never let me watch Temple. To be fair, out of all the things that they restricted me from seeing, Temple of Doom
Devil was fair.
makes a little bit of sense, you know?
Yep.
I can't argue them too much on that. But they would also tell me, they were like, that one's not very good. It's not very good. It's not nearly as good as the other two. You don't need to waste your time with it, basically. They would tell me that. But I would still, because they would bring home the VHSs and whatnot. There was a time they brought home Temple of Doom, and I wasn't allowed to watch it, but I would fucking stare in detail at those Drew Struzan like posters on the VHS, and I would just look at it and make up that movie in my mind, basically.
Okay.
So making up that movie in my mind, being told that it wasn't as good as the other ones, and then finally seeing it at, however old I was, like probably 17 years old or something like that. And knowing that Willie Scott was annoying and that there's like monkey brains and some of the stuff had not aged well, to say the least. When I finally saw it, I was like, yeah, no, that movie wasn't good. And it was, when I met my wife and, she was telling me all these different types of movies she would watch and everything. And I would tell her the types of movies I would watch. And mine were all blockbusters and hers were all weird movies. And when we bonded over Indiana Jones movies, she was like, yeah, no, my favorite one is Temple of Doom. And I was like, ah,
That's fucking right. It is.
She's like, no, my favorite one is Temple of Doom. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand. And
Mm-hmm.
the more people I met and like the more I've like gotten cultured, like so many people, particularly 80s kids, love Temple of Doom.
Yep.
And I mean, I've only seen Temple maybe 4, maybe 5 times in my life now. With this most recent rewatch, and I was a lot more open-minded on this last rewatch and had a lot of fun watching it. Really, really had a lot of fun. Like, and again, my taste in movies.
I do.
You understand my taste in movies.
Yep.
There is no reason in hell why that movie should not be my favorite.
I was gonna say I would expect you to love that movie. Yeah.
And I can't wrap my head around it either. I still really enjoyed it. I had fun with it, but dude, god damn it. I just like, if I think about Indiana Jones, I think about that fucking truck sequence in Raiders. And like, it sounds fucking ridiculous, but that's the type of man I want to be. It's the type of man that is like
the kind of guy who fights Nazis on trucks. Damn it.
I mean, yeah, wouldn't you want to be that? But
yes,
it's the determination in that sequence, the never giving up, the pain that you would have to endure, and the little bit of glee he gets when he like fucking is like ramming like Belloc and everyone, yeah, I don't know, like I just think about that scene in particular, and no Indiana Jones sequence comes anywhere close to how fucking cool he is in that moment. Like, fucking shot in the arm, like his entire chest torn up by fucking gravel and everything. Raiders is and always will be my favorite Indiana Jones movie. I love Last Crusade because of the trauma it caused me, and because how much fun, like, and I watched it with my dad, and that's a movie about fathers and sons. So and Temple is a theme park ride, like it's just fun. It's just ridiculous fun shit that doesn't make sense to me. I argued in my review, I'm like, wow, there's the poor guy who gets his heart taken out and then is like halfway down the fire pit and he gets set on fire. For some reason, we don't rip out Willie's heart, and she goes like 75% down to the fire pit, doesn't catch on fire.
She's not one of them. They don't rip her heart out because she's not one of them.
You justify it however you want.
Perfect movie logic.
Plot armor.
That's right. Willie's plot armor.
But and this one I just feel like is a great story about a man at a time, basically. There's a million different details and things that I liked in this, and Harrison Ford's performance. I don't know why, like I really wanted, like halfway through, for him to not be wearing the hat anymore. It's for some about that hat and him in that outfit. I was just like, he's just, maybe it's because he's not that guy anymore, and maybe that's part of it. Maybe that's part of the thing. That I was just like, he just needs to lose the hat. If he just loses the hat, like I can like see him just doing the whole thing. But I don't know. I did enjoy this movie. I do look forward to revisiting it.
The more I've thought about it in the days since, the more I look forward to watching it again. The more I like not just like to analyze, but the more I get like excited to watch the movie again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So for what that's worth, a couple of sleeps have made me think of it more fondly and get more excited. So
yeah.
Also, what's up? Oh, just you had mentioned the de-aging stuff. I just wanted to say that like it's not that I totally can't tell that there's de-aging technology there. It's just that like in every movie with VFX, I can tell that they're not real.
Mm-hmm.
So like that doesn't take me out of a movie any more than any other scene in any other movie, because I always know what's real and what's not real, you know? I find that to be a really interesting thing when people talk about that, like Christopher Nolan, like, oh, I can't deal with CGI because it takes me out of the movie. I'm like, I'm aware that the entirety of the movie is not real and that what I'm watching is, you know, an imaginary story shot on a camera. So that doesn't affect me as much. But I didn't notice the de-aging technology so much. It didn't really affect me so much. I did notice the voice, and I think that's a totally fair and valid note. But and I would have used the voice modulator to fix that. Like that would have been my answer to that. But even then, I think you can justify it and just say, hey, man, Indiana Jones has been spending 7 years smoking cigars. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And getting punched in the throat, and he just sounds like an old guy now. So anyway,
that's fine. Like I don't think the de-aging is perfect. That being said, like I always try and put myself in like a person's shoes who sees this, you know, when they're a kid or something like that. Because like, think of it for us. Like I always hear people say practical is better, blah 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 blah. You know, we feel practical effects are better because we were raised on practical effects. Mm-hmm. Yes, they're tangible, and sometimes they look more real because they're tangible.
And sometimes practical effects are better. I'm a fan of practical effects. You know that.
Yes, and that's what I'm trying to say. Like our brains, like, all right, well, maybe, like, it's there. Like it's there. Your brain knows it's there, right? Yeah. You know, whether or not it looks good or not, it's there.
Right. It's there.
You know, where a lot of kids these days don't like going back to those types of movies because they say it looks fake. Right. And so I try and put myself in the position of like a 10-year-old kid's going to watch this movie and he is going to think that is young Indiana Jones. There's not going to be no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And in 30 years from now, 20 years from now, when he watches it, he's going to go, man, those effects look good. And whatever they're doing in the movies at that particular point in time, they go, man, this doesn't look good. And it's all about perspective. Like, I know that a lot of people think the effects in the Star Wars movies, the prequels, don't look good, but fuck me, man. When I saw that shit and
they were amazing.
Like I thought it was the coolest thing in the world, man. So it's all about perspective, and you know, you don't get to say that certain shit's better just because it was that way when you grew up. That just turns you into an old man yelling at the fucking cloud.
Exactly.
I mean, and I will even tell you that my in-laws like saw this movie on opening night, and we were getting ready to go see the movie, and like my mother-in-law looked at me and she's like, Johnny, did they film part of this before? I was like, what do you mean?
Ow.
She's like, did they film this before?
I just hurt my neck laughing at that. That's fucking awesome.
It looks just like him. And that was one of the things. It just made me smile. I was like, I knew, like at that point, I was like, I knew that it wasn't gonna look, because I had seen the trailers and I knew that, like, you know, the uncanny valley and stuff like that. Like I'm you know, fairly like in tune with that. But it made me smile because I was like, oh man, like, you know, maybe it's just a group of us. Maybe it's just a handful of us that don't know, that can't tell the difference, and we're just saying that across the board, this, that, or the other. So that made me feel really good that, like, you know, there are people that just go see these movies just for the fun of seeing these movies, and they don't give a shit one way or the other. They're just there to have a good time, and you know what? They deserve to enjoy movies too. It's not just for us fucking film snobs, you know?
Absolutely. And I still, and I mean, I know you do too, but like, I still have that side of me. Like, I'm always analyzing the script and I'm always thinking about like the shots and like all that stuff's going on in one part of my brain. There's also a part of my brain though that's always just fucking stoked to be like at the movies,
Yes.
and I never want to lose that. That's important.
No.
Because that's why we love this shit to begin with, right? When we were little kids, we weren't like, how do I feel about this script structure? Like, I don't know if I agree with that shot. Like, when we were kids, we fell in love with these movies because of these stories. That's why we fell in love with this art form. And so I think it's important to keep in touch with that side of yourself and with people like that.
It is one of those things, like, I remember, like, I have a vivid memory of, like, two specific viewings. One being episode 1, The Phantom Menace, like seeing that in theaters, like walking into, like, they had built a new movie theater where I lived.
Oh wow!
And it was the biggest theater I'd ever been to up to that point in my life, and that was my first time going to that movie theater, and it was the biggest screen I'd ever seen, and I was like, yeah, just shy of 10 years old. It was 1999. So no, fuck, I was 8 years old when I saw episode 1.
Okay.
And like my mind was blown.
Yeah.
Like by what I had seen just from a visual perspective. And I thought it was the coolest goddamn thing to ever happen. And I remember a couple of years later when episode 2 came out, and that feeling of right before the movie started, of like me looking at my friends, because I got to go see it with like 3 of my best friends at the time, and like looking at my best friends and just being like, oh my god, we're gonna see the next Star Wars movie. And then the credits rolled, and I think about that specific feeling almost every time I go to the movies, whether it's a like what sometimes it's me just thinking about that feeling and going, all right, cool, I'm not going to feel that feeling at this movie because this is just a whatever movie that like I kind of want to see, but you know, here we are. And then there are times when I'm nudging Celeste going, hey, this we're going to see an Indiana Jones.
We're
now.
here for
like,
no.
Like, and when it's special like that, like that's, yeah, you're absolutely right. That's why like we do this. That's why we're having this conversation right now.
Right.
Because we just love this shit. So, yeah, man, I'm like, I think it's a very, very well made movie and a good final farewell to the character. Better than leaving off with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Definitely. Yeah. It's a movie I'm glad we have. I'm glad we have this movie.
Yeah. Final ranking, if you feel comfortable giving a ranking at this stage in the game.
Ranking what, the Indiana Jones movies?
Out of 10.
Oh, I don't know if I'm there yet.
Yeah,
it's gonna be over 7. I can tell you that because I like the movie.
Yeah.
So
I was thinking the same thing. Yeah, I was, as I was stating the question, I was like, I don't even know if I could give a solid ranking for this yet. It definitely
I'm not there yet.
Or an 8. Yeah.
Well, have you ever had a movie like where like you maybe didn't like certain things about it, but then over time you cared less about the flaws and more about the positives?
Oh yeah, I got a movie, and we've talked about this movie many times.
Okay.
Halloween Ends.
Okay. Perfect. I really feel like this is going to be like that for me. I feel like as time goes on, I'm going to care less about the things that bothered me and a lot more about the things that I liked. That's the feeling I get. We'll see if that actually happens, but that's what I imagine is going to happen with this movie. Because the more I think about it, the more I think about the stuff that I liked, and the more excited I get about the stuff that I liked.
One of those movies also that like I was thinking about, because like we don't have to dive too much into this because it's way off topic, but one of those movies that like I had a lot of mixed feelings towards and still have mixed feelings towards, but overall come out on the positive end is Glass.
Yep.
And that's a really, really fun story because we both agree that Unbreakable is probably like in the top 10 best comic book movies of all time.
Absolutely.
And it's a movie that we talked about at length. And then when I took Celeste to go see Glass, I got this little nudge in my arm, and she's like, is this Kalen sitting right next to me?" And I lean over, and you are sitting right next to us. Somehow, none of us had like seen each other up until this point, and we had both like coincidentally ended up at the same showing for Glass. And I think we both just kind of leaned over, like, so, and we were both like, it's too soon to tell, basically.
Right. That's right. We did. I don't know if you remember this either, but you went and saw Split before I did. And you came out of the theater and you just texted me 3 texts in a row. Go see Split. Go see Split right now. Don't read about it. Just go see Split. 3 text messages right in a row. I was like, I guess I better go see Split. Yeah.
I don't remember that, but that makes me very happy. I do
and
think
then when Glass came out, we were in the same theater.
Dude, that's just like you can't make that shit up. Either. I legitimately thought about it the other day and I just fucking smiled. I was like, how we talked about Unbreakable for years. We talked about Unbreakable for years. We would go on tangents for hours in the middle of the night about how good that movie is. And I was thinking though, like I was thinking about it. I was like, dude, we gotta like you and I have to have like a separate just like series where we cover each of those movies and talk about them individually.
Definitely.
I think that's definitely something that we got to do sometime. But for now, I think that'll about do it, my man. I think I will let you go live your life. This is gonna be coming out pretty quick. I'm gonna have this out within the next probably day or so. So this is gonna be dropping before our very, very special podcast that we did with our buddy Brian, which I'm not gonna spoil here, but it's coming up soon, and I'm very, very excited to start dropping those episodes.
You're all gonna want to hear it.
Yeah, I think
you're all gonna want to hear it.
It's arguably the best podcast that we've put together, and that's not like hyperbole. It's just good because it's lengthy and in depth, and I got 2 great co-hosts with me. But Kalen, thank you for joining me talking about Indiana Jones. Like I could talk this shit with you any day of the week. So obviously you were going to be my first call to talk about this. So and thank you guys if you tuned in. Appreciate you listening. Share this shit with your friends. Give us a like. Give us a follow. And we will see you motherfuckers on the flip side. For now, I am Jony Horror of The Jony Horror Show, and my buddy Kalen Berreman, as always, just keeping me in check. So, adios, muchachos.
Peace.